very excited to be joining you again today, the fourth day of 2023. I know this year is going to be a good year because we're going to make it one. We're going to be talking about one of the ways we can make our year better, but before I do that, I'm going to break down what we're going to be talking about because I know this is the pre-game. The first 5 minutes before anybody else gets here, which is always a very special time for us. We're going to start by talking about procrastination and the role that it plays in making our lives actively worse. And I will tell you my personal experience with procrastination. And then we're going to talk about the groundbreaking historical first trans person in the US to be executed. And we'll talk about DeSantis hunting down wokeness wherever he finds it. We will discuss Hunter Biden's art buyers coming to light, which is going to be really interesting, and why that's happening. And we'll also look at the new fake Indian. Wake up, babe. New fake Indian just dropped, and it's not Elizabeth Warren this time, or that other college professor lady, or Rachel Dolezal. This sure seems to keep happening quite a bit, but we'll talk about that. And finally, we'll talk about the latest DC comic. I know you guys are going to love it. It's going to be great. So let's start by talking about procrastination without any further ado. Haha. So this is new research out of Sweden that shows that procrastination pretty much makes your life worse in every way. And we're going to break it down, and you guys can tell me if you've had a different experience. You guys tell me if procrastination has made your life better, because I'll tell you that it has not made my life better. And when I decided to stop doing it, my life got like hockey stick better in no time. Are you a procrastinator? You're more likely to be depressed, unhealthy, and broke, study suggests. Wow, that's harsh. Researchers from Stockholm recruited 3,500 students from 8 colleges. This is a pretty small sample size, but that's okay. Found those who regularly put off doing things had a host of issues in their lives. That makes me wonder if this is cause or effect, but let's read on. While some tend to procrastinate a little, for others, it's their general disposition, which kind of is hard to counter. Charles Dickens famously wrote, "Procrastination is a thief of time." Now scientists think it can also steal your sleep, damage your health, and leave you worse off financially. Whoa, those are really big charges. A study of 3,500 Swedish students found those who regularly put off doing things had an increased risk of poor sleep, lack of exercise, and getting into financial difficulty. Experts believe this is because although most people have the tendency to procrastinate a little, for others it's their general disposition and can affect how well they do in life. That I would believe. Those who often delayed an intended course of action despite expecting to be worse off risk everything from poorer academic achievements, that makes sense, to general health, the study suggests. And I wonder if that's because they don't like to do things like work out or shop appropriately so they can eat healthily at home. Researchers from the University of Stockholm recruited students from 8 universities, studying everything from social sciences and technology to economics and medicine. They chose students from high levels of freedom and low structure of university life puts high demands on their capacity to self-regulate, which is truly correct. The only thing you have to do is study well enough to pass your classes, and pretty much everything else is up to you, which leaves a lot of opportunity for irresponsible behavior and, yes, procrastination. They were asked to rate a series of lifestyle questions ranging from 1, very rarely or does not represent me at all, to 5, very often or always represents me, over a 9-month period, the equivalent of an academic year. This came up with their procrastination score, which was then measured against physical, mental, and psychosocial health issues such as loneliness. I will say right offhand that doing this kind of study using someone's self-reported information is really spotty and really hard to trust. But to me, it actually does make sense that procrastination would make absolutely everything worse in your life. And that doesn't surprise me in the least. It would make your health worse. It would reduce your willingness to work out. It would reduce your likelihood of fixing your own food. As far as academics, it would make studying harder to do. It could make things like even taking out the trash or taking care of the dishes or doing any of these other basic life skills less and less likely, and more likely to develop a pattern of slovenliness, like bad behavior, like absolute laziness as far as like taking care of their own living environment, which would, of course, contribute to situational depression. Although there is a case to be made that depression itself can make you more likely to procrastinate. So if you're just tuning in, we're talking about procrastination because they just found from a study in Sweden that this is one of the things that can make people more depressed, unhealthy, and broke. I would believe it because when I was procrastinating, I was incredibly unhappy. And then when I made a concerted effort to stop, I was a lot happier. In fact, at the time, I thought to myself, one of the things I really want to teach my kids is the power of not procrastinating. Just because everybody else does it, when you don't, that sets you above and it puts you in a position of excellence because then you're in a situation where you can say, well, I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to do the thing that's required of me right away. And I think that my refusal to procrastinate is one of the things that people like Steve Bannon liked. I think Charlie Kirk commented on my producer skills, and I don't think it was my producer skills as such. I think it was my quick responses. I responded to emails incredibly promptly when I worked for Timcast, and I tried to make sure that nobody was waiting for me. I hated to be that person that others were waiting for. So now we can really get into the important stuff from today. Today was kind of a light news day, so we're going to kind of take it easy. We'll see what happens. Hey, good evening, everybody. 5 minutes. Psh, yes, I like to start 5 minutes early. So if you guys are here, good for you. You are the early birds. You are, in fact, getting a worm. I hope you're happy. Hello, I hope today is good. Hey, Lids. Today was great. I was doing wifely stuff. I did not have a lot of time to look after my appearance because I was rearranging things, cleaning things, making sure that everything was where it belongs, all the stuff that my husband doesn't do because he's working all the time, which is as it should be, I think. Hey, Lids, been a min. Hope you're doing well. Your setup looks sweet. Library vibes. Yes, this is Andrew's library, my husband, and he has books like this that I have certainly never read. I am not enough of a nerd to read them, but apparently they're great because it's turned my husband into the smart, sharp-thinking person he is. That's actually a pretty decent sample size. Okay, yeah, so studies are often such small sample size, and this is one of the things that Ian always took issue with. He's like, that's not enough people. And I admit that I would prefer a study with a scope of like 1 million people, but at the same time, when you have a sample size of like 1 million, you're going to have a really hard time keeping track of the information. Shared on Twitter, I've only got 12,000 followers, but hopefully it helps keep in spreading the word. Thank you very much, Quest Fanning. I appreciate that. We're going to start tweeting out before we go live as soon as we get our act together. A lot of changes this new year, and we might be doing some traveling, so I'm just taking one day at a time. We're going to see what happens and go from there. So let's move on to our first story of the day. As I said, it was a little light of a news day, but some interesting things did happen. I want to say that groundbreaking things are happening as far as equality goes. Missouri carries out its first known execution of an openly transgender person for 2003 murder. This person, it is not controversial whether they were guilty. They admitted guilt. They said they were sorry for what they did. They were a loving and caring person, etc., etc., and they recently became transgender, I think possibly in the hopes of staving off a lethal injection. Unfortunately, this did not work, and they were ultimately put to death. And I have to say that I feel more comfortable knowing that I live in a world where trans people can be subjected to the whims of the state just like anybody else. I'm jesting, of course. I'm so conflicted about the death penalty that I think this would be a really interesting conversation to have with Andy, my husband, because he hates the death penalty, thinks it's a really bad idea, basically on the principle that he doesn't like anything the state does. I dislike it based on the idea that I think 1 in 4 people put to death are put to death erroneously, which I have huge issue with. That is a huge percentage of the people who face a lethal injection who turn out to not be guilty of the crime that they're put to death for. And I find that morally disturbing. Admittedly, I do think that there are crimes that are worthy of a death penalty. I don't know how that should be meted out, though, because I don't think... You look at how incompetent the state is in every other regard. You go to the DMV and you try to pay your taxes, you try to register these are just things that I'm struggling with right now. You try to register your car in a different state and they're incompetent and they are slow and they're going to make mistakes and they have no vested interest in getting anything right. How much do you think the state cares about one individual person's innocence or guilt? I don't think they care at all. And that's why I can't be fully in favor of the death penalty, even though I know, and I'm sure you all agree, that there are things that deserve death or a fate worse than death, which I know is a heavy topic, but I just figured I'd mention that since we have this in front of us. I do know, at least in this instance, this person had admitted guilt. They basically said they're sorry for what they did. They admitted that they admitted everything, and it was really heinous what they did. I think CNN notes that it is unusual that a woman be charged for rape, which, yeah, it certainly is, as well as murder, which is also kind of a first, probably a first for the rape as well. But here we are, brave new world. I'm loving it. Hope you guys are enjoying the free sample trial of 2023 because you don't get to unsubscribe. Anyway, moving on to slightly brighter waters. Ron DeSantis, the DeSantis administration is ordering Florida universities to provide information on how they're pushing woke programming. Interesting. Florida colleges and universities are required to submit information detailing how they use state resources to support diversity, equity, and inclusion programming, according to a memo from the state's Office of Budget and Policy obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. All colleges and universities within the Florida college system and the state university system must submit a report explaining how they use state-given resources to provide diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory programs, according to the memo, which was sent out by the Office of Budget and Policy Director Chris Spencer to Florida Commission of Education Manny Diaz and State University System of Florida Chancellor Raymond Rodriguez. Florida state law requires oversight over higher education curricula, requiring officials to identify the degree programs offered by public post-secondary educational institutions. I'm really working on my reading and not tripping over my words, so I hope you guys are enjoying this clarity of speech I'm practicing. I'm trying really hard. Each Florida college system and state university system institution must complete the attached document to provide a comprehensive list of all staff programs and campus activities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory within our state colleges and university, the letter reads. I think this is fully fair, and I know that leftists are going to come out screeching about this, and they're going to say that the government has absolutely no role in education and they have no right to ask for this kind of clarification. I present to you state resources. I present to you the idea that if the state can give you money, they can ask you questions to clarify about their curricula. I don't think that's unfair at all. I think that if you're going to accept the state funds, you are buying the ticket and you're going to take the ride. And I think that's fully fair. Now, admittedly, I think that all of their endowments should be seized, as Will Chamberlain is constantly talking about, because with the amount of money they have a real racket over there, and the fact that everyone's pushed to go to college is just a serious case of ripe for corruption. It's such a hotbed of this ideology that is thriving anywhere there's too much money to be found. And higher education is not helped by the amount of money that's poured into this. Let's read this. Henry Rogers says, the DeSantis administration formally requested every state university system in Florida to report a breakdown of expenditures and resources dedicated toward any campus activities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory. So I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think about this? Let's read this thing if we can. I know this is a little small. As the Executive Office of the Governor prepares policy and budget proposals ahead of the 2023 legislative session, it is important that we have a full understanding of the operational expenses of state institutions. Well, there you go. Just in time for 2023, they need to keep track. They're doing bookkeeping. I see no problem with this, but you guys can tell me what you think. I know that it's possible some of my libertarian followers are not going to like what DeSantis is doing, but at the same time, I have to ask, we have a system that we all know is not perfect, and we are in a position where we can actually hold these people accountable. And I think that we would be remiss not to take this opportunity. And I wish that things were more libertarian than they are, but given that things are as they are, because we live in reality, not in the way we wish things were, I think that this is a good first step, because I think that it's been too long since anyone was holding higher education accountable, and it shows. It shows by how much it costs to go to school. It shows by what they're teaching these poor kids who just go in and are brainwashed. I don't know if you guys recall the story of that lady who got out of college and her mom had to hire somebody to come in and deprogram her daughter from all the woke nonsense she'd been taught, because she was fully convinced, like she was all in for this crazy woke diversity stuff. And thank goodness her mom was able to rescue her from that. If higher education had been held accountable before this point, no one would have been forced to that extreme of a measure. And they're lucky they were wealthy, because I'm pretty sure that the average person wouldn't be able to pay the deprogramming costs that this mom paid. I don't know where she found this person. I don't know what they decided to do to make it work, and luckily her daughter was in full cooperation with her. But I wish that more states, in fact, if you have a Republican governor in your state, you should probably be asking them why they're not exacting the same kind of questions of higher education, because you can look at the wokeness and the kind of rot that sets in. I remember we used to say, well, these people are crazy, but wait till they get to the real world. They'll see how far those ideas take them there. And then they got into the real world, and it turns out that because they have the entire control of all the institutions, all they have to do is say, oh, well, I went to this fancy college. I believe these things. Therefore, you should give me, power and a position of privilege and a position where I can exercise these HR type ideas. I think that it is past time for higher education to be held accountable. This is a good first step. I do also think that the amount of money that goes to these colleges should be severely restricted. I don't know why. Some of these institutions have endowments in the billions, with a B, billions of dollars worth of federal funding, and they can do whatever they want. They can teach whatever they want. And what's worse, they can charge whatever they want. If you are really serious about the crisis with student loans, you should examine seriously how the money that's being sent to these schools is being spent, because it's not being spent in a meaningful way. It's not being spent in a way that actually betters people or readies them for their career paths. It's being spent to teach them what functionally amount to postmodernist kind of communist ideas. And it shows. This is changing the shape of our society, because we've forced so many people to go into these programs, and we've made it possible for them to do so. Even though it costs like an arm and a leg, they're still able to take out loans like this when they're barely baby adults, 18 years old, with no idea what they actually want to do with their lives. They take out loans in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then they pursue these goals, just trusting that they will have a career. And then it turns out that they do have a career, and that they can have an outsized effect on the world. And if they can't hack it in private sector, they can go on to be a professor at colleges, and the racket continues. So it's really kind of unsettling to see, but it is refreshing to see DeSantis stepping in. I think if they're going to use state resources to fund this kind of thing, they have every right to ask this kind of question. But I digress. You guys are welcome to tell me what you think. Lydia, can you give me one specific reason why I am subscribed to you? Well, I'm assuming you are subscribed to me because you clicked subscribe. But I think that what you're looking for is why you should follow me. And I think the most compelling case for following me is that I offer, hopefully, a positive outlook on the world, because I firmly believe that civil war is not right around the corner, that we should not hate we shouldn't hate our neighbors, and that the people who are trying to tell us that we should hate our neighbors are our actual enemies. So everyone trying to sow division and discord, they're our real enemies. And the people who live next door to us, and the people we shop with, and the parents we raise our kids with, are not actually our enemies. They might just be people that we have disagreements with, that we don't fully understand, are easily overcome with a little conversation. That's kind of the thrust of what I'm trying to do here, and I'm not striving for 1 million followers. I'm just hoping to make a difference to even one person. If I can manage that, I will consider what I do here to be particularly meaningful to me. Somebody said can't make an omelet. Yeah, I'm assuming you're saying can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Not sure if that was in relation to the trans prisoner thing. I too hate the death penalty because I believe all life is precious. Yes, I do too. Also, killing after the threat has been neutralized isn't justice, it is vengeance in my humble opinion. Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. Somebody said it's harmony. I'm not sure what you're referring to. You got to be a little specific with these chat because it's hard for me to keep track of what exactly you're talking about if you don't give me a little bit of context. The reason they're called capital offenses and not capital offenses, it isn't a crime against the state, but against the bank. Interesting. Interesting. Same is true on a smaller transactional basis in all commerce spending speaks. Higher education makes as much sense as calling in people in charge the elite. So sad. I think we call them the elite to separate them from us, and they are indeed a separate class. I think it's useful to have a way to delineate them, but I don't think the definition of elite really precludes them. But because I love definitions, let's find out what elite means. I see your issue. A select group that is superior in terms of ability or qualities to the rest of a group or society. Oh, well, isn't that fancy? Yeah, in that case, I really agree with your analysis. I don't think they're elite in any way. I think they're probably, oh my gosh, you guys, Paul Ehrlich got back on Twitter today and he was tweeting about, I have to show you this tweet. It is insane. And it made my blood pressure rise. So let's go over to Twitter just for a moment because this is, I have to make a sidestep because it's insane. This guy is like, science agrees with me on everything and you're all wrong and I'm all peer reviewed and you're not. And I think that you're, crazy right wingers who disagree with me. Absolutely nuts. Oh, let's see here. Where's this tweet? Yeah, okay, here we go. This is so good. Okay, I'm making a foray into this. 60 Minutes extinction story has brought the usual right wing out in force. If I'm always wrong, so is science. Literally, technically incorrect. Literally incorrect. He paid someone money because he was so incorrect. He made a tangible bet that he lost. He was wrong about this. He was wrong about all his markers. He said billions would starve in the 80s. He said we'd be facing a famine of epic proportions. He said the ice caps were going to get bigger and they were going to sink down in the ocean and create a tidal wave. Anyway, I digress. With that context, let's finish this tweet because it's great. If I'm always wrong, so is science, since my work is always peer-reviewed, including the population bomb, and I've gotten virtually every scientific honor. Sure, I've made some mistakes, but no basic ones. Holy moly, holy cow, this man, I swear, for the love of all that's good, this man basically just said that the peer review process is absolute nonsense. You can see my comment there. You may owe Mr. Simon some more money, Paul. Tangible proof of your wrongness. Also, I'd ask you how you felt about helping start China's one-child policy, but I already know you should try being less evil. And I don't think that was too pointed. This is like Anthony Fauci saying, I am the science. At this point, frankly, I just question absolutely everything that's peer-reviewed. And I have no problem doing so. Because if someone like Paul Ehrlich can get up there and say stuff like, I'm scientific, I'm sciencey. Sure, I've made some mistakes, but no basic ones. Oh, you mean like everything you predicted in the population bomb? Wackadoodle. I just thought you guys would enjoy that since we were just talking about him. He is really a delight, and I can't recommend following him enough. Craziness. Holy cow. Whew. Anyway, that raised my blood pressure a little bit reading it because from my understanding, his book, The Population Bomb, was actually one of the things that pushed China to make the one-child policy official. Like, I don't know that anybody who's not a tyrant has a greater body count than what he is at least secondarily possibly responsible for. And I will couch that carefully since I know that he wasn't the one who put China's one-child policy in place. But I do know that his book influenced it, and I do know that his book was insanely wrong about the 70s, about the 80s, about every prediction he made. In 1968, he was predicting that billions would be starving in the 80s. And he predicted that by something like 1974 or possibly 1980, the UK would be a tiny island home to only like 121 million starving people. So wrong. My goodness. Anyway, that raised my blood pressure a little bit, which is very exciting because I'm about to talk about another story which is going to raise our blood pressures collectively, probably even more. So let's just jump right into it. Let's just bite the bullet, I guess, because this story drives me crazy. Because as somebody who is pro-life, I have personally take great exception to how the Bidens are treating this particular granddaughter of theirs. So let's read about it. Amateur artist Hunter Biden paints himself into a corner as mother of his love child demands he reveal identities of mystery and perhaps foreign buyers who have paid $500K for his works after he cried poverty in bid to lower support payments. Now, Hunter Biden fathered this child, this poor little girl named Navy Joan, with her stripper mother. At the same time, he was in a relationship with his brother's widow. So that's just going to set the stage for Hunter's character. I know you guys all know this already. Not a great person. But we don't hear a lot about his paintings, and it certainly is a travesty that his buyers are private. So let's read what his ex is saying. Hunter Biden is attempting to lower his child support payments for his 4-year-old love child whom he shares with London Roberts. The first son cited a substantial material change in his personal finances. Oh, so you mean you're not getting money from dad anymore? Interesting. More about that in all of the corruption that Biden is in with China and Ukraine. The first DailyMail.com can reveal that Roberts, 31, is demanding to know how much Hunter received from selling his artwork and the names of the buyers. If Hunter wants to renegotiate the child support on financial grounds, he'll have no choice but to disclose details of all his income, a source said. The love child, Navy Joan, is the fourth of Hunter's 5 children, but neither he nor his parents have ever met the child. Wow, that's a new low, or publicly acknowledged her existence. Well, she does exist, and from my understanding, it's quite clear that she's Hunter Biden's daughter, which just puts her in a horrible position, and I feel bad for her. I really do. Even though it's like toxic bad luck to be associated with the Biden family, it is still her family and she has every right to be associated with them. She did nothing wrong. Wannabe artist Hunter Biden has continued to brush aside awkward questions about who exactly is ponying up $500,000 for his novice paintings, especially as his dubious business dealings with foreign adversaries keep coming back to haunt him. But that could change in a stroke thanks to the first son's brazen bid to pay less child support for his 4-year-old love child, Navy Joan Roberts. DailyMail.com can exclusively reveal. This is why I like the Daily Mail. They do have scoops that sometimes other places don't have. Hunter, 52, has asked an Arkansas judge to recalculate the money he hands Navy Joan's mom, London Roberts, each month, citing a substantial material change in his personal finance. But single mom Roberts, 31, has pushed back by demanding to know exactly how much her former flame has pocketed from his pictures and the names and details of all his buyers. The move would force Hunter to finally disclose in publicly filed court documents the identities of the mystery art lovers who are shelling out between $75,000 and $500,000 for works by a self-taught beginner. To which I just have to say, I'm going to sip my coffee now. This comes days after Roberts filed a petition to change Navy Joan's last name from Roberts to Biden. Clinton Lancaster, Roberts' attorney, said that Navy would benefit from carrying the Biden family name, adding that the name is now synonymous with being well-educated, successful, financially cute and politically powerful. Yeah, gonna agree to disagree on that one between Joe and Hunter. Hunter Biden is attempting to lower his child support payments. His daughter is adorable. This lady is not ugly, and she looks like she's being a good mom. There's all these pictures of her doing stuff with her daughter, so she at least is actively involved in her daughter's life and may be one of the only good things in her daughter's life at this point. I just feel so bad for this little girl. DailyMail.com can reveal that Roberts, 31, is demanding to know how much Hunter received from selling his artwork and the names of the buyers. George Burgess, an art dealer hosting Hunter's work at his trendy Manhattan gallery, had ignored 3 letters from incoming House Oversight Committee chairman. Pictured, Hunter with art dealer George Burgess and Hunter's son, Beau. Right. Interesting. So he named his son Beau after his deceased brother, with whose widow he had an affair. That is disgusting. I find everything about Hunter Biden to be really morally repugnant. Here's little Navy Joan and her mom playing softball. Oh, so cute. Additionally, if Roberts can prove the recovering drug addict is actually banking more thanks to his newfound vocation, the court could decide to raise his child support payment instead of lowering it. If Hunter wants to renegotiate child support, and art sales would absolutely qualify as income under Arkansas law, a reliable source told DailyMail.com. London has submitted through her attorney a long list of questions under the discovery process. She wants to know every cent Hunter has made from his art, what exactly he sold, and the names of all his buyers. And frankly, I feel like she is doing the public a great service because I doubt there's any other way that this information would come out. This level of corruption we're seeing here, I think it's only fair that his ex and the mother of his daughter would be able to question that. That's absolute insanity. I can't believe someone would pay $500,000 for this ridiculous art that Hunter Biden, self-taught amateur, came up with. I do not believe this. To me just looks like extreme money laundering. Like, oh wow, like political influence money laundering. Hunter claimed that during the bitter 10-month case that he was unemployed and had no monthly income despite living in a $12,000 per month Hollywood rental and driving a Porsche. But when an Independence County, Arkansas judge ordered him to produce financial records, he's balked and settled out of court, the two sides announcing a global final settlement of all issues. The deal proved anything but final when Hunter filed in September to have the case reopened, writing, "Since the entry of the existing child support under there has been a substantial material change in the move-ins financial circumstances, including but not limited to his income." Roberts' attorney, Clinton Lancaster, responded by firing off a fresh discovery request, running into hundreds of questions covering the first son's assets, earnings, overseas business dealings in Ukraine and China, plus any payouts to attorneys and agents. Oh man, I am kind of salivating at the idea of figuring out what exactly is going on with Hunter Biden's art. I would love for this to come back and bite him so hard. I truly believe he's incredibly corrupt. I believe that he's bought and paid for. I believe that he's selling influence, probably his father's name, using the family name and association to kind of curry political favor and avoid probably prosecution. Even though the defendant has been the subject of articles by the New York Times regarding his art, President Biden's art in quotation marks, that's snarky, I love it. President Biden's administration has taken measures to shield the White House from the buyers of the defendant's, quote, art, and the defendant was seen in New York City as recently as a few months ago, showing off and selling his art. The defendant has refused to provide any information about his art or the income derived from it. Oh my gosh. Lancaster protested in a December 27th filing. Instead, history repeats itself and Mr. Biden seeks a protective order. If Roberts succeeds in procuring fresh details of Hunter's foray into the art world, she will succeed where a host of lawmakers and conservative media outlets have failed. That's what I'm saying. She's the only person who can do it. The lobbyist turned painter reportedly made $375,000 from 5 prints sold at a pop-up show in 2021, prompting concerns that buyers could snap up artwork to earn political favor from the Bidens. That'd be crazy. There's no history of corruption in that family. Just kidding. The White House dismissed concerns about the unprecedented prices by insisting the sales would be anonymous to prevent corruption, a step that critics complained would make it even more ripe for influence peddling. What? I'm really fighting the urge to swear right here. What on earth What on earth were they thinking that making buyers anonymous would do? I'm willing to bet that they knew exactly what it would do. This White House may act dumb, but I don't believe that they are. I don't believe they are. They're not dumb. They're malicious. Changed my mind. Comer wanted to know the names of the buyers and whether they intended to benefit from President Biden's elected office. My goal has always been to discover work with artists that I think are important culturally and historically. Burgess clapped back in an interview with the Post. Hunter Biden is all of those things. Yeah, that's not correct. Despite tabloid reports suggesting Hunter met Roberts while she was working as a stripper, DailyMail.com has previously revealed that the pair hooked up while she was employed at his DC-based investment firm. Oh, so it's nepotism. Rosemont Seneca. She and Hunter conceived Navy Joan around December 2017 while he was still in a relationship with his brother Beau's widow Hallie. Wow, that is a gross, nasty, rotten person. Little girl has always gone by the last name Roberts, but her mother's latest round of court filings includes a request that the youngest be able to call herself Navy Joan Biden to benefit from carrying the Biden family name. I think that's fair. I think if you're going to be slapped with that ridiculous lineage, that you should be able to at least benefit from having the family name. Hunter took up art as a way to help him in his recovery from addiction to alcohol and drugs. If Hunter wanted to renegotiate the child support on financial grounds, he'll have no choice but to disclose details of all his income, a source said. Good, let's go. In an effort to prevent any ethical breaches, the White House officials have said they put measures in place to shield information about how much Hunter's work was selling for and to whom. What? That does the opposite of what they're saying it will do. That's nuts. But ethics experts have scoffed at the measures and said it was clear the current way the galleries operate is unacceptable. Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that's actually pretty good if that is his art. Still not good enough. Lancaster wrote, the defendant, the president, first lady, and other members of the Biden family remain estranged from the child. To the extent that it is misconduct or neglect, it can be rectified by changing her last name to Biden so that she may undeniably be known to the world as the child of the defendant and member of the prestigious Biden family. In February last year, Roberts gave evidence to a Delaware grand jury investigating Hunter for alleged tax crime, joining a growing list of former business partners and associates who have been drawn to the Department of Justice's secretive 3-year probe into his overseas dealings. Federal prosecutors were particularly interested in what she learned about Hunter's finances, according to her attorney. Roberts declined to comment on the latest court filings. Wow, okay, so it turns out that the Bidens are gross, slimy, corrupt people, and they're also horrible in their personal lives in facts that surprise no one at all. Let's see here what you guys think about this, because I personally find it so gross, and I find it gross. It's just gross. I don't know how else to summarize it, but I really hope that this discovery leads us to where we want to go and finally does what all these Republican lawmakers were unable to do. Let's see here. Peer review is just publishing cover for academics. I think you're right. I was pretty hungry in the 80s. Yeah, I don't think you were dying of starvation, though. Andy chimes in, the state can't do anything right. Please don't give them the right to say who lives and dies. That's exactly what I said. The state is highly incompetent, and I know that a large percentage of people who this is the most serious thing that you could possibly entertain, some percentage of them are wrongly charged and wrongly put to death. It's awful. Peer-reviewed means absolutely nothing if your conclusions are wrong. Yeah, I guess so. Science supports me. Yep. I have reviewed your comment and I agree with it. I have reviewed Andy's comment and I agree with this comment. I also reviewed, I agree with Lid's most of the time. That's right. I'm peer-reviewed. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Look at that. Who is this person that can deprogram woke people? Oh, I'll show you the story. This comment is from Andy. There was a mother who hired someone to work with her daughter to deprogram her from wokeness because she sent her to an affluent, really nice college that had her super, super indoctrinated when she came home. And thankfully, she was on good enough terms with her mom that her mom was able to work for her and hire that person to Andy says that guy 2024. Yeah, for sure. Somebody says his works are inspired. I'm assuming you're talking about Hunter Biden's. Looking upon Hunter's art is like staring into the face of God. I think it would be more like looking at a biblically accurate angel in that it's incredibly confusing and terrifying. In fact, that's the analogy that I think I'm going to use there. I mean, if all it takes to deprogram someone is to show them the truth, but they have to be willing to let go of their current reality, and that's the hard part. Exactly. That's why I'm giving huge props to the person who functionally deprogram this lady because she said that it was a serious, hard climb, and her mom saw that something needed to be done, so she stepped in and took the necessary efforts. Somebody's waving. Hello, Zach. Middle name, Hunter. No, Navy Joan's middle name is not Hunter, but she's definitely related to Hunter Biden. Somebody says love triangle. I don't think that's it. Is Hunter's child support in the spending bill for Ukraine? Oh, probably. That's a great question. LOL, I don't have any money, but let's settle out of court. Yeah, seriously, I'm not impressed. Oh, Andy says to write a review of the Public Square app, screenshot it and send it to me on Instagram, Andy Leiterman, for a chance to win a prize. We are doing a push to try to get a bunch of reviews for the Public Square app. I like the Public Square app myself. I know that it needs fine tuning and it's not necessarily going to be available in your area, but I think it's a great idea and would love to see it grow more. Sour Patch, I've missed you on Timcast IRL. I'll have to follow you on here. Cheers. Yes, welcome. Happy to have you. I'm really glad to actually have a voice here on my own channel, and I'm looking forward to doing a bunch of interviews with people in the future. Got to get that set up. That's one of the projects we have underway. We're just going to have to see what happens with this year. It's going to be exciting, whatever happens. And I do have one final story to share with you guys. I know it's been a while, but we have another fake Indian, and it's great, and it really makes you wonder why people with all this white privilege are pretending to not be white in order to get ahead. Let's read. Kay Leclerc, non-binary art collective boss, accused of faking Native American heritage. Ooh, interesting. And unfortunately, they found this really fuzzy picture of her that looks terrible, and it's what they have for the article, so we're just going to have to put up with it. The co-owner of a queer indigenous artists collective in Wisconsin, oh boy, is facing accusations of being white after claiming to hold Native American heritage, according to a report. Kay Leclerc, who identifies as non-binary, allegedly faked... Oh gosh, we're doing the their pronouns. I guess we'll just tolerate it for this article, but for the sake of science, this is a female who decided she was queer. Leclerc was accused in an online forum of actually being white after claiming since 2017 she was of Metis, Oneida, Anishinaabe. I can't pronounce these tribe names. I'm sorry. Haudenosaunee, Cuban, and Jewish heritage, Madison 365 reported on Tuesday. Leclerc, also a founding member of the collective and emerging leader in the Madison Indigenous arts community, earned artist stipends, a paid residency at the University of Wisconsin, speaking gigs, and art exhibitions with the help of her Native American claim. Isn't that interesting? That reminds me a lot of Elizabeth Warren, who used her so-called minority status to gain educational accolades, I believe, was the claim, which I never liked. Did not think that was a good thing, and it's never okay. I don't like people who lie like this. This is disturbing, but to me it makes sense. If they're giving credence to people who claim to be Native American and people who say they're, for example, non-binary, then it just makes sense that people would look for ways to capitalize on this. I can't really even blame them. I think it's a perfectly fair thing to do, and I think this fully dismantles the argument of white privilege. I was going to say white supremacy, but that's not right. They're saying white privilege. They're saying that people who are white have natural privileges that people can't even see, whatever. I don't know what white privilege is, and I hate it. That's not true. I do know what white privilege is, but I do hate it, and I don't think it exists because people are still pretending to be Indians. Leclerc, who went by the Native American name she doesn't even capitalize it. I don't care about this name. This name isn't real. Was allegedly exposed after a hobbyist genealogist posted evidence of her real genealogy on an online forum. The online forum user Advanced Smite told Madison 365 that questions about Leclerc's claims led to some digging. Look at that. Here she is in 2017. She's a cute little white lady. Kay Leclerc earned artist stipends and a paid residency at the University of Wisconsin. The user, who did not want to reveal their actual identity to the outlet, and the New York Post is not threatening them like CNN did with that one guy who made a meme about Donald Trump, used online records and resources to connect Leclerc's lineage to German, Swedish, and French Canadian ancestors and posted the findings on a forum. LeClaire didn't answer questions when contacted by Madison 365, but instead sent a long statement. LeClaire reportedly said any culturally related items that they have were being given back to the community and vowed not to seek new grants while taking themselves off current grants. I am sorry, she reportedly wrote. A lot of information has come to my attention since late December. I am still processing it all and do not yet know how to respond adequately. What I can do now is offer change. Oh, she's a lovely lady. It's too bad that she just didn't decide to do something constructive with her attractiveness. It's too bad. She decided to tan her skin and dye her hair and dress in this attire and take eyes off of actual Native American people, which is insane to me. I don't think that this is the right thing to do, obviously, but I do think that they've created a drive for people to be special and be different, and she thought that her best route was to be a Native American, even though she wasn't actually. Moving forward, my efforts will be toward reducing harm by following the directions provided by Native community members and community-specified proxies. Currently, this means I'm not using the Ojibwa name given to me, and I am removing myself from all community spaces, positions, projects, and grants, and will not seek new ones. It's unclear what the information from December was. The collective said in an Instagram post that the organization and LeClaire parted ways as of December 31st, 2022. The collective at Gigi, none of this is capitalized and I hate it so much. The collective would like to extend our gratitude and utmost sympathy to the indigenous community within and surrounding TJOP in the wake of the recent revelation that many harms committed by a former co-founder, Kay LeClaire. Part of the post read, evidence has come to light indicating that Kay has made false claims regarding her heritage, her art, and her position in the community. Pronouns all my own because they're based on science. So I can't help thinking that the fact that we've turned this into kind of a competition of who can be most special is really ultimately harming people. And this is the same issue that I have with #MeToo false allegations. This is taking attention away from people who are actually victims. This is taking attention away from people who are actually Native American. And I don't think it's right. I think if we're going to prioritize these people, I think that we should have a very high standard, including genetic tests, to make sure people are who they say they are. And you guys can call me crazy if you like, but I don't think that an Elizabeth Warren type setup and never being held accountable is at all acceptable. I remember when she was on stage saying that, oh, her grandma said she had high cheekbones and she had powwow chow. And everyone's like, are you freaking kidding? I remember Donald Trump teasing her about being 0.0024%, I believe, which is less Native American than I am. And I'm so unbelievably not Native American, it's not even funny. But the fact that this woman wanted so much to be special that she's identifying as non-binary, she's identifying as races that she's not, she's identifying as like sexual identities that she's definitely not, because non-binary doesn't really exist. Although I do love the idea that the non-binary designation divides everybody into binary and non-binary, therefore creating yet another binary. I think that's funny. Let's see here. Someone says, has anyone noticed that upskirting? Oh, goodness. That's great. That's a very specific lie of her familial origins. Yeah, it does. She does have high cheekbones. Sure, Elizabeth Warren may have high cheekbones, but she's not Indian in any way. The haters are coming for you, Lids. There's going to be a day when the haters get louder. I don't care at all. I don't care. You're going to have haters. If you're trying to do something significant in life, if you don't have haters, that tells me that you didn't even try. I'm trying. I'm going to have haters, and that's okay. You look great, Lids. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm wearing Andy's shirt because I was working on wife stuff today and didn't have time to dress up fancy. Adrienne Curry says, I am special ed. She identifies as Native American. Yeah, exactly. I hope your Christmas and New Year's went well. Yeah, for sure. It definitely did. It was awesome. I meant the non-binary person has high cheekbones. Yeah, she does. That's probably what makes her non-binary. It's certainly what makes her special. Oh, I just lost my Chrome, and I hate when that happens because I was going to show you guys one more story. Let me see if I can find it. Oh my gosh. I can't handle Apple. Oh, I might need Andy to come help me with this. I hate it when these things disappear and then I just can't find them and don't know how to find them. I was going to read you guys this thing about the Joker because DC Comics has decided that apparently, and you guys can and should look this up. In fact, I'm going to make this part of your homework for today since I can't show it to you myself. They've decided to make the Joker pregnant, as in giving birth to another living human being. Now, from my understanding, he's giving birth to a monster, so I'm not sure what exactly the message is there. But a lot of hay is being made about the fact that this is a man who's giving birth. And I just have to say that it's a comic. It really is. And it's not a big deal that they're doing something that's weird and different. From what I can tell, this actually doesn't look that woke. For example, the Joker isn't a trans man who's having a child. And it looks like it's part of the plot, which I don't really know anything about. So if you guys are comic book nerds, by all means, let me know if I'm on the wrong track here. But I think it just looks like more storytelling. I know there was also, I think, a Korean show about a pregnant man, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this guy is pregnant. And everyone's like, yeah, that's part of the story. That's just what the story has been about the whole time. I think when people try to consider something that's totally strange and out of the way, one of the things that they think about is pregnant males or some gender doing something that only the other gender can do. Like, for example, we have these crazy female superheroes who are doing things that clearly only men can do. And that's because in the world of comic books, anything goes, and creativity is good. In fact, creativity is and should be rewarded. Now, where you get into the murky woke waters, that's not a good thing. But I'd be curious to see if this does actually end up being a woke issue, or if it's just a case of our creativity in the artistic realm. I don't think that they're necessarily trying to be super woke, although it is DC comic. And if I recall correctly, Superman's son was by gender or whatever. I don't know what they're talking about anymore. And somebody there had pink hair and somebody there had a boyfriend, and it was just all getting all woke and dicey, which kind of grosses me out. But at the same time, I feel like everything goes on such a cycle. It shouldn't really be surprising that everything's being rolled into this kind of woke mindset that nothing can be normal. And in their attempts to be original, they're doing all kinds of woke stuff, if only to curry favor from woke crowds, which with the Ring of Power, they found that didn't really work very well, where they did a bunch of diversity casting and diversity hiring. They were finding they were not having a great deal of success, but I digress. I don't typically talk about pop culture. For that, you guys can and should tune in to Pop Culture Crisis weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's our friends Brett and Mary running their own show over at Timcast, starring Dane, the marketing extraordinaire, and sometimes they have Shane Cashman and some of our other former coworkers over at the Cast Castle, so that's always a good time. I'm sure that tomorrow, if they haven't covered it already, because they are very diligent, Brett is extremely diligent with his story covering, I bet you they'll talk about the Joker being pregnant tomorrow, and they'll give you the final verdict on whether this is actually a woke thing or if it's just an example of creativity in the comic book scene. But because I don't know much about it, I will digress. I'll just say that it really is happening, and it's not a joke, which was people's most frequent response was, this is a joke, haha, this can't really be happening. It is, and it shouldn't really surprise you, because whether they're being creative or being woke, it's bound to happen sooner or later. So I'll leave it at that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Adrian, love you. 3-finger swipe left. Look at that. Pregnant Joker. That's right. Want a good laugh? Look up non-binary in Spanish. Yeah, so I know that in Spanish does not play games. Spanish has 2 genders, and the language can either be male or female, which is interesting. We have officially entered upside down world. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. I think there's room for nuance here. It's possible that they are just doing something creative. We'll have to see what happens. Somebody says Seahorse Joker. Yes, in the seahorse world, the males actually do carry the offspring. I believe what happens with seahorses, and I'm way out of my wheelhouse here, but I think what happens is that the mommy seahorses shuttle their eggs into the dad's safe pouch, and then the dad just ends up being functionally pregnant and carrying them to term. It's really interesting to see baby seahorses being born. It's also slightly disturbing, so watch at your own discretion, but I find it really interesting. I like that seahorses exist because they're so unique and delicate. All right. We already had Arnold being pregnant in the movie Junior. Yeah, see, it's already been done. Nothing new under the sun. No wonder Eric July's comics are selling. Yeah, I heard that those are doing really well. And I think it would be great if Eric were to go on Pop Culture Crisis with the gang over there. That would be perfect. Just saying that a man being pregnant isn't original. I don't like it, but it's not original. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everything goes on a loop. And I feel like we're at a period of cultural stagnation to the point that it's gotten really boring and kind of easy to gauge what's going to happen next. And I don't love Neil Gaiman, but I will say that he is a very original writer. He has really interesting stories. He did Sandman. I was going to say Death Note, but that's not correct. Death Note is another one that I've heard is really original. Sandman, which is a TV series at this point, and which was a graphic novel before, was pretty good. And I loved what Neil Gaiman did with Terry Pratchett in Good Omens. It was a really good book, and they recreated it perfectly in my mind. I've never seen such a good recreation of a book in TV form. They did great work. Somebody said they mentioned it today but didn't go into it much. Yeah, there's not a lot to go on right now with this pregnant Joker thing. Who knows? Maybe it's just a tiny little plot mention. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, I was born in the USA. I grew up on the flat plains known as Indiana, so I'm Native American. Yeah, and you have the added advantage of being born in Indiana. I'm just saying, you could call yourself a Native American for sure. Lids, we miss you on Timcast. I'm very sorry. I'm glad to be doing my own thing. I do miss being on Pop Culture Crisis, though. That was always a good time. Seahorse Life, no thank you. Yes, you should look it up. They're awesome. You're a likable person, Lydia. Thank you, I think. I will die a happy man if I can see a society where people are just comfortable being who they are and to not have to make up new identities just to have some significance and uniqueness in the world. Yeah, I really think that if we were to look inside in not a narcissistic but in a developmental way, we would all be a lot better off, because when you look inside, it's something Jordan Peterson talks about a lot. He said he doesn't pray, but he says if you sit on the edge of your bed and ask yourself what you can do better, the answer will come to you. And I think that that's true, and it's very hard to do. It's something that will truly humble you. Like, being truly introspective is genuinely humbling, and it's hard to do. You have to consider how you're affecting other people, and sometimes it's not as good as you wish it was. Being married is very humbling and can really be a case of iron sharpening iron, and it's great, but it's hard. And I think that if people were to do that instead of the narcissistic look at me nonsense that you would think is really navel gazing, but really more than anything, it's looking outward, almost just looking into a mirror or looking into a camera and being like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. Without ever turning inward and being like, okay, am I actually great? Am I treating people the way they should be treated? Am I making positive social change? If that's your shtick, am I making my family's lives better? Am I I don't know. Yeah, Lydia, giving a shout out to Indiana. I will give a shout out to every state in the union because I'm from Colorado, and Colorado does not get enough of a benefit of the doubt. And we get all the weed jokes. We get all the being high jokes, get super fit mountain jokes. We get biker jokes. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. I know that each state has kind of its own thing. Like in Indiana and Iowa, it's going to be corn. In Ohio, it's going to be like taking over. But there is that meme that I'm a little jealous of Ohio taking over the whole world, which I think is amazing. And it has the Incredibles meme where he's watching all the flags changing and they're all turning into the Ohio flag. It's just brilliantly done. I love whoever's running propaganda for Ohio. I think it's brilliant. I took a shot. Let me see here. I used to live in Denver. Yeah, Andy used to live in Denver. I used to live in Colorado Springs. So you were probably closer, Zachary, to Andy than you were to me. Loveland is close to. I got busted in Colorado in 71. It was not fun. Yeah, you should have just waited until weed was legal a few decades later. You have to ask and mean and actually want the answer. Yes. So to get back to the narcissism conversation, looking into a mirror is not enough. You have to look inside yourself, and you do have to want an answer, and it's going to be hard. It's very hard work. This is why self-authoring is a positive thing. Self-authoring is a really good way to write out exactly what you're thinking and feeling and exactly how you want your future to go. And I view it as a huge positive. I think that everybody should sit down and write out exactly what they want out of the future. In fact, when I did that, I used Jordan Peterson's self-authoring. I actually achieved most of the goals that I wrote about. I said, in 2 years, I want to, for example, have my college degree in whatever field. And I ended up, shortly after, I had the motivation to get back to school, which ended up, it ended up not working because I ended up working with Tim Pool. But at the same time, it was enough of a kick in the pants for me to be like, okay, I can actually do this. This really is something that I want. That means that I'm going to have to work for it. So I'm prescribing all social justice warriors a dose of self-reflection and some self-authoring because I don't think there's any other way to do it. It turns out that everything in life is hard, which is why I have such an issue with romance novels and like the Hallmark movies, because they make it seem like the big lead up is to the wedding and that's the greatest thing in the world. And then after that, you just live happily ever after. And it's like, no, what are you talking about? Every part of life is hard, and that's what humans need. I know nobody wants to hear this, but we need life to be hard. We really, really do, because when it's not, you get what we have here yesterday, to quote Guns N' Roses, who's quoting someone else. You get a failure to communicate, first of all, right off the bat, but you also get softness. You get self-indulgence. You get this level of narcissism where people are just staring into the cameras and their only concern is not that people are watching their concern is not that people are watching them. It's that people might not be watching them. It's so strange to me. And that's why, frankly, I think that 1984 isn't the right comparison for what we're seeing now. I don't think that any one story is, just like I don't think that Nazi Germany is the be-all, end-all historical event. There are a lot more atrocities committed that we never ever talk about because I think, for example, the Holocaust overshadows everything. And we know that if communism were more stringently studied and more brought to light, there would be a much, much more negative reaction to it than there is today. Have you taken the self-authoring program by Peterson? Yes, that's what I did in 2017, I think. Windsor, Colorado. Oh, nice. Let's see here. Writing down to what I want. I want a beer. I can't be bothered going to the fridge. I don't know what to tell you, man. If you're self-authoring that you want a beer, but you can't be bothered to go to the fridge, there might not be any. I'm just kidding. There is hope for you, obviously. I think that you need to want something a little bit more impactful than a beer. Honestly, in my wildest dreams, I could not have imagined having a podium to spout my crazy ideas from. I think it's wonderful. I'm very grateful. I remember when I was 11, realizing with resignation that I probably wasn't ever going to get to be a journalist because all the journalists were left-wing and my opinions were never going to fit in and were probably going to get me fired. And I didn't realize at the time how prescient I was because I was only 11 years old. I wasn't even a teenager. I was barely a young child. I think that people underestimate how clearly kids can see. I think a lot about what happened to me when I was 10. I was thinking about all of this stuff. I was thinking about feminism. I was writing letters to the editor. I was finding it really interesting. And this is exactly what I'm doing now. I'm not writing letters to the editor anymore because I don't think that's going to make a difference. But I think Tim used to talk about what you were doing when you were like 13 or something. And I would say it's more like what you're doing when you're 10, because when I was that age, I already knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew where my calling, if it can be called such, was going to lead me. And I thought, I would love to write. I don't think I'm going to be able to do so for a newspaper. And my mom settled on the idea of writing children's books, which I still think is a really neat idea. George, over at gprime85, our friend over on Twitter, gprime85, wonderful artist. He made his own children's book, which I also like, George Alexopoulos, called, I think, Gooseberry Pie, which looks just adorable, and I really would like to get for some of my friends who are having kids. So it can be done, but it's hard. Oh, somebody says self-authoring is a business plan for life, and I am inclined to agree. I think that's a wonderful thing. Colorado, mountains. Yes, that's correct. We love our mountains in Colorado. They really are great. All right. Let's see here if I can get my Chrome thing back. Nope, don't see it. Huh, weird. All right, well, thank you all very much for tuning in this evening. I'm sorry that I goofed up that last story. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, or Andy can show me how to prevent it. Such nonsense, such shenanigans. I am off to go pet the cat and install some under cabinet lighting, hopefully. So I will see you all tomorrow. Until next